What's up, guys? I'm an obvious fan of building computers. They're the most efficient and affordable way to get into computer gaming, and they provide the best price to performance. But I also understand that sometimes buying a computer is a better choice. You can find great deals on pre-built machines from companies online or from local sellers. Unfortunately, this is not one of those times. Brian from Tech Yes City uploaded a video detailing a $350 gaming computer that almost 1,000 people bought at the time. He covers the downfalls of the PC, but I decided to order it myself just to see how bad it truly is. And I'll be honest, I'm getting some Walmart overpowered PC vibes from a couple months ago. So let's take a closer look at this machine. So pre-built machines are usually a no-go because of the cost overhead. Think about it this way. You have $350 budgeted towards a computer. If you're building a computer, you can spend all of your money on your components. You get the best components for the price that you have, and it will take you 3, maybe 4 hours to put the entire computer together if you're a beginner. But when you spend $350 on a pre-built computer, this is actually what you spend it on. $50 or so for the labor of building the computer, another few bucks for a 1-year warranty, some cash on genuinely activated Windows 10 keys, more money for shipping and packaging, even more money to keep profits high for the seller. So you're really only looking at about $200 out of the $350 that you have that's going towards the computer components. And with a budget of only about $200, you're not gonna get a good computer. If we check the computer listing, we see that it comes with an i5-650, a dual-core processor from 2010, 8 gigs of DDR3 memory, a 1 terabyte hard drive, a dinky Radeon 7470 that it literally rivals Office computer graphics from about a decade ago. It has Windows 10 Pro, a Wi-Fi adapter, and a 450 watt power supply. I parted out all of the components on PC Part Picker, and what do you know, it comes out to around $200, which is about the price that I mentioned earlier. And that's before any kind of wholesale discounts. Considering that over 800 of these models have been sold, I'm assuming that the seller buys these components in bulk, which alleviates the cost even more, meaning that these computers probably cost less than the $200 you see to make. I mean, when your power supply costs as much as 2 burgers from Five Guys, something's wrong. It almost seems like the seller went to AliExpress and Alibaba or eBay, searched up CPU, motherboard, RAM, hard drive, storage, case, power supply, sorted it from price lowest to highest and said, okay, I'm gonna add that in there. Boom, put a gaming keyword in your title, and you have yourself a computer that a lot of ignorant buyers will buy. These computers use low-end components that are usually old and lack a lot of newer features. But what's the point of just talking about it when we can actually try it out? So this is the computer right here. Let's give it a shot. When I unboxed the computer and saw it for the first time, I had polarizing first impressions. The motherboard and the power supply definitely gave me some red flags, but everything else, excluding the video card of course, didn't seem that bad. I wanted to dissect it a little bit further, so I did a part-by-part analysis. The computer case itself isn't that bad, and I honestly wouldn't mind using it for my own budget build. The airflow is limited, but you do have side grills and a bottom vent, and it comes with 3 LED RGB fans and an LED strip with a remote. And that's exactly how you entice uneducated buyers. RGB isn't bad in its own right, but when you're spending $50 on RGB lights and you're only spending $22 on a power supply, a very critical component of your computer, something is not right. So say this with me. Too much RGB is not for me. Say it again. Too much RGB is not for me. Too much RGB is not for me. Say it again. Too much RGB is not for me. One more time. Too much RGB is not for me. Too much RGB is not for me. Too much RGB is not for me. Too much. All right. Well, I know that's one you're using. In all seriousness though, don't fall for the trappings of cool aesthetics and fun lights. Function first, form after. Case is average. Sadly, it only goes downhill from there. We have a standard stock Intel CPU cooler, which is nothing out of the ordinary, but underneath it, we have a weird, and by weird, I actually mean bad, processor choice. It's an i5-650, a hyper-threaded dual-core, which is almost a decade old. Now, these CPUs were good budget processors maybe 5 years ago, but nowadays they're going to struggle. It's overclockable, but you won't get very far on the stock Intel CPU cooler and the motherboard that it comes with. Just to give you some insight, it scored 196 on Cinebench R15. That's slower than the cheapest Intel CPU that's in production today. You can't upgrade the CPU to a 4-core, 8-threaded Xeon for maybe another 20 bucks, but that kind of defeats the purpose of buying this system in the first place. So CPU cooler, it's okay in my book. CPU, it's a no. I initially thought the motherboard was a classic run-of-the-mill budget motherboard you would find for maybe $35 on eBay. I'm now realizing that it's actually a Chinese OEM with a server BIOS. It's still an H55 budget motherboard, but at least the BIOS isn't as locked down as your classic OEM BIOSes. The VRM cooling isn't the best, and you have the bare minimum I/O options. I'm totally okay with all of that. The issue is that the platform itself is just so old. No USB 3, it uses older PCIe standards, it doesn't have any M.2 slots, and it supports DDR3 and 10-year-old processors. Now for the right price, I don't think any of that is a big deal. But considering that now you can build something like an OzBox, a $100 computer that uses more modern and faster specifications, or even a Ryzen gaming computer that has a modern and upgradable platform for the same price, using such an old platform at this price point doesn't make any sense. Now the RAM amount that it has is fine. 8 gigs is still the minimum for modern gaming, and I can totally get behind that. It's clocked out of the box at 1600 megahertz, but unfortunately I could only get it to run at 1333 with the rest of the components. The RAM quality, on the other hand, it's bare minimum, it's basic. And I won't lie, I've used RAM that's very low quality on this channel before, but again, that was at a lower budget, and that was also during a time when RAM prices were absurdly high, so you went for the cheapest one you could find. Nowadays you can find a $40 kit that has a heatsink and has much better quality than the ones that you see in this computer. So the motherboard and the RAM, they're a no from me. As far as storage is concerned, you do get a 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive. It's not an SSD, but similar to the RAM, it's probably the bare minimum that you would want to get into gaming, and you can always upgrade to an SSD later. Now, hard drives usually have a 3 to 5 year lifespan, and because I was concerned about the newness of the drive that was in this computer, I decided to install Crystal Disk Info to check how long this computer has been used, and the results were not very reassuring. The drive isn't new like I expected, probably refurbished, but check this out. It has over 6 years of uptime. That's absurd. With an uptime that high, I wouldn't be surprised if this hard drive died within the next year or 2 years, and that's not reassuring. And then we have the video card. Unfortunately, this isn't the worst part of the system, but man, it's painful to see. The video card is arguably the most important part of a gaming computer system because it drives the graphics and the pixels that you see on screen. The other components are important as well, but without a solid video card, gaming's not gonna happen. And what video card does this come with? A Radeon 7470. I mean, just look at it. The Radeon HD 7470 is bad for a $350 computer, and I'd argue that it's not even worth the 15 bucks that it goes for on eBay. To give you some reference, the Ryzen 3 2200G, which has integrated graphics, has a graphics chip that is 400% faster, almost 400% faster than the 7470 that you guys see right here. You also don't get Radeon Relive or any of the cool software and feature that come with AMD video cards and their drivers. So there really isn't a redeeming quality about this card at all. We'll get into benchmarks in a little bit, but it's not a good take. And we've reached the worst part of the computer, the power supply. Now I'm gonna say this loud and clear. Never cheap out on the power supply. Even in budget computers, at least pick up a power supply from a reputable brand. This one that's installed in this $350 machine is a ticking time bomb. When I was looking at the listing, I initially thought it was a Corsair VS450, which is lower tier, but it's good enough for basic office computers or computers with efficient processors and very cheap video cards that don't need external power. After further analyzation, it's an Apivia Venus VS450, which is bottom of the barrel bad. Now, I'm not knowledgeable on power supplies, but I understand the basics. In order to get a better idea of the performance of this power supply, I asked the Johnny Guru forums, and Johnny Guru himself replied. This is what he had to say. No power factor correction, very loud fan, sleeve bearing fan, double forward front end, no DC to DC, cheapest capacitors available. The list of bad things goes on and on. And then he goes on to roast the rest of the computer. You can read that at your leisure. The saddest part about this is that the seller uses this crummy power supply unit in their higher tier, more expensive $670 gaming computer. That's even worse because the stakes are higher. That computer has a GTX 1060 in it, so once this power supply dies, which it probably will, you're losing a 1060, definitely more valuable than a 7470. And at that point, it's unacceptable. Now, I suppose the silver lining, if you can find one in this computer, is the fact that the cable management is not bad and the computer actually looks pretty good. You get yourself a genuinely activated Windows 10 Pro key, which is awesome, and the Wi-Fi is stable, although not the strongest. It was about half the connection speed that I got over Ethernet, but also keep in mind that I'm only about 20 feet away from the main router in our house, so I imagine that this is the best case scenario for this Wi-Fi adapter. The case doesn't look that bad, but again, everything just feels cheap, and that's a lot coming from me, one of the cheapest people I know. But let's put this computer to the test. According to the listing, Fortnite should run without any lag at 27 FPS on low settings using this computer. It's kind of contradictory because 27 FPS won't be a smooth experience, but I digress, I guess. I decided to install Fortnite, Apex Legends, and CSGO just to put the computer to the test, so let's see if these games run properly. The computer's up and running. I'm going to do a few benchmarks, specifically Cinebench, and see exactly what we get. This might take a while. I'll be back. And we're back. The i5 650 scored a 195 on Cinebench. It's really bad. And now for the probably most anticipated part of this video, we're gonna play some video games. Let's start with a little bit of a fork knife. See where it takes us. Oh my gosh. This is so bad. I wasn't expecting it to be this bad. Oh my goodness. Alright, so we're basically playing at the resolution 853 by 480. Everything is at the lowest. Everything is off. We're going to show FPS just so you guys can see how good or bad it is. It's going to be at the top right. Oh wow. This is going to be a wild ride. Can't wait to see exactly how this is going to feel. Oh wow. This is definitely something. Okay. Alright, so right now we are not averaging 27. Okay, well maybe we might. Let's see when we land. It's also frame limited to 30 just so it's smooth. Otherwise it would be choppy. Not that it's not already, but it would be a lot worse. Okay, so the listing said that you would average around 27 FPS on low, and we're not. We're somewhere in the high teens. And honestly, I can't tell if I'm getting shot at or if like the game is just, yeah, it kind of froze. I probably died. Yeah, don't buy an eBay gaming computer, otherwise this might happen. Yeah, I placed 91st. This is totally unplayable. So in this edition of Does the eBay Gaming PC Suck? We're gonna play CSGO. It automatically set the settings to very low, or the lowest, and I'm running it at 1156 by 648, something like that. I'll be sure to confirm with that, but it's slower than 720p. All right, so we're at around 30 frames per second. It's the first playable game. Oh wow, I'm so bad. I'm so bad. All right, so in CSGO at super low settings, it's playable. Oh my, like I suck, but it's playable. Depending on where you are, you'll get anywhere from about 25 to 55. You might hit 60 in some regards, frames per second, but it's definitely something that's doable. The graphical fidelity is pretty low, but I know most people don't play CSGO for the graphics, and most people turn down their settings anyway, so this could be fine. Hello, Ulrich. Oh my gosh. Alright. Let me see if I can sneak up on this bot. See the jukes, stop. Alright, this is embarrassing enough. Let's switch to a different game. And now we have the Fortnite killer itself, Apex Legends. Again, the lowest settings possible, and I'm running it at 1024 by 768. I'm getting some really bad glitching in full screen mode, and performance is bad. It's really bad. This is even in training, which is less intense than an actual match, but I think I'm gonna have to change the settings to make sure it's windowed mode. Yeah, so now we're doing borderless window, and it's still really bad. It's unplayable. We're getting under 20 frames per second, and I'm sure I can go into the graphic INI file and probably change a few things to make the resolution lower, but if we're going to be playing under 1024 by 768, it's just not going to be a good experience, no matter what kind of frames per second you're getting. Yeah, we're gonna go with unplayable for this. There's really no point for you guys to see any more of this gameplay. It's really bad. And so that kind of concludes our game testing with this computer. Although they were being honest in the listing with the whole 27 frames per second thing, or at least it seemed like they were being honest and real, it really wasn't 27. So even that was stretching the truth and an extent of false advertising. Overall though, stay away from these computers. Do some basic research and ask questions. You can ask me questions, you can put questions in the comments, you can ask me on Twitter or Discord, or you can ask other tech YouTubers out there. Just do some basic research and make an educated decision. And I know a lot of times parents, grandparents, they would want to surprise their kid with a gaming computer like this. Parents, same thing applies to you. Do some research, ask questions first, because you don't want to end up buying a bad product for your son or your daughter. And if you want to build a computer and you only have $350 for the pre-built computer, then you can build something like a Ryzen 3 2200G, 8 gigs of RAM, and a B350 or B450 motherboard. And I actually have a guide on the channel already from last year that still works great. It's a little bit out of date, but it will give you everything that you need. And even if you're too scared to build a computer, you don't want to do it at all, then order all your parts and then go to a local computer shop and have them build it for you for another 50 to 60 bucks. That's a better investment than buying a pre-built computer like the one that you've seen in this video. I'm just imagining some young, naive boy or girl, girls can game too, they receive this computer because they've been wanting to play Apex Legends or Fortnite for so long, and they get so excited, they hook everything up and they're like, oh yeah, I'm about to play Fortnite or Apex, and it looks like this and it runs like this. That would suck. I wish I was kidding, but that happens a lot. It does happen a lot. So to all of you buyers out there, just do some research. And to all the sellers and people making these products, you need to stop. This is bad. But I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you liked it, then leave a like. If you loved it, share, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. Make sure you give me a follow on Twitter because you'll get all kinds of updates. If you want to support the channel monetarily, then go over to Patreon. All of that money gets funneled back into the channel so I can make cool videos like this and upload more regularly. But I don't have a watch, but I'm gonna pretend like I do. I'm actually late for my 1:30 class. It's 1:26, so thank you guys for watching, but I have to head out. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.